There's a lot of talk right now whether AI is original. The simple, cleaner answer is no. Not in the very way humans are. AI is a pattern recognition machine. Here is the simplest way to think about it. If you ask 5 textbooks the same factual question, you may get slightly different wording, maybe a different example, maybe a different order, but the core answer usually stays the same. That is what AI often does. It pulls from patterns, it reorganizes them, it predicts what should come next. So if brands use AI with generic prompts, they should expect generic answers or outputs. And when enough brands do that, they start sounding the same. This is where psychology becomes your moat. Hi, I'm Pahuna. I run Lagraphia, a digital marketing agency. My work sits at the intersection of AI, marketing, and psychology. In this series, we've been talking about the AMP framework or the AMP framework. A is for AI visibility, which is getting found. M is for marketing or marketing architecture, which is getting distributed, making sure your content reaches the right people in the right places. And P, which stands for psychology, which means getting chosen. Because once AI can find you, once your marketing can distribute you, the next question is, why does someone choose your brand over another one? This conversation keeps coming up for a reason. Researchers behind the Artificial Hive Mind paper evaluated more than 70 language models on open-ended prompts and found strong similarity across outputs. And another peer-reviewed study by Doshi and Hauser found something similar. AI can help people produce stronger creative work individually, but across a group, the outputs become more alike. And that tracks, because AI does not think the way a human with lived experiences thinks. It does not go out to the world. It does not observe tension in a room. It does not sit with a customer conversation and feel what is unsaid. It does not build a point of view from experience. So if the prompt is generic, the output usually stays close to familiar territory, just faster, smoother, and cleaner. And this is where the analogy helps. If you ask AI a broad question like, write an article about digital marketing, for example, that is a lot like asking, or looking into a textbook for an answer. You may get a polished version, you may get nice structure, you may get facts organized clearly, but you're still inside the same known pool. Now compare that to writing an original story. You don't build a strong original story by asking for a story or asking, oh, write me a story. You research, you observe, you study people, you notice contradictions, you build characters, you develop tension. You decide what the story is really about. That is closer to how original brand thinking works. And that is the difference. AI is very good at helping people with a textbook version, but strong brands are often built more like stories than textbooks. So the problem is not simply AI. The problem is generic thinking amplified by AI. Because if your starting point is write a homepage for a marketing agency, or write a trust building brand post, or write a thought leadership post on AI, and 1,000 other businesses are doing the same thing, then all of you are drawing from roughly the same pattern pool. This is where sameness starts. And that is where a lot of AI-assisted marketing quietly breaks down. Not because it's badly written, not because it's invisible, but because it becomes harder to distinguish from everything else in the category. The result is polished sameness. And polished sameness may still get indexed, it may still get surfaced, it may still get mentioned, but it does not give people much reason to choose you. Here is the nuance. This does not mean AI cannot help create strong content. It can. But the quality of the result depends heavily on the quality of the thinking you bring into the process. If the starting point is generic, AI usually makes it smoother, not more original. But if your starting point is strong, a real observation, a real lived insight, a sharper concept, a framework, a point of view, etc., then AI can help you brainstorm, structure, sharpen, and express that idea more clearly. That is a very different use of the tool. So the divide is not AI versus no AI. It is generic thinking versus original thinking. AI amplifies whichever one you begin with. And this is exactly why it belongs to the psychology of the AMP framework, which is the P in the AMP framework. Because psychology is where distinction starts to show up. Psychology asks, what does your audience feel when they encounter your brand? What are they worried about? What are they trying to avoid? What identity are they protecting? What makes one brand feel trustworthy, more specific, more credible, more for them than the another one? AI can help organize this information. It can summarize, it can draft, it can speed things up. But it does not originate the emotional truth of your buyer. It does not originate your lived strategic judgment. It does not create a real point of view for your brand out of nowhere. That still has to come from somewhere human, somewhere you can connect at an emotional level. And once content production gets easier for everyone, the human layer starts to carry even more weight. That is where resonance comes from. That is where trust comes from. That is where choosing starts. I've said this before, and it fits here too. There is a difference between being mentioned and being chosen. AI visibility may help you get mentioned. Marketing may help you get distributed, but psychology often closes the gap between the two. Because when a buyer sees multiple competent options, the decision is really made on logic alone. It's made on trust, it's made on recognition, emotional fit, on whether one brand feels like it understands the problem more deeply than the others. That is why two brands can both be visible, both be competent, both be well structured, and still get very different outcomes. One gets surfaced, the other gets chosen. The gap between the two is often psychological. And this is becoming even more important now because AI is becoming part of how people discover and evaluate information. So if your content sounds like a cleaner version of what everyone else is saying, your brand becomes easier to overlook. Not because your content is wrong, but because it is forgettable. And in a world where AI can help everyone produce acceptable content faster, acceptable is not as much an advantage. So what should brands do? Well, number one, they should stop treating AI like a substitute for thought. Instead, start using it as a tool for developing thought. That means you do not begin with the most generic prompt in the world. Be specific. You begin with stronger input, a sharper insight, a harder truth, a real observation from your work, a concept your competitors are not naming clearly, a point of view that actually belongs to your brand. Then use AI to help shape that into something clearer, tighter, and more useful. That is the better model. Not AI replacing originality, but AI supporting originality. So this is what makes psychology in the AMP framework so important. And if there is one point I want to leave you with, it is this. AI is a pattern recognition machine. It can help strengthen original thinking, but it does not generate original thinking on its own. So if your marketing starts with generic thinking, AI may only make you sound like a more polished version of everyone else. But if your marketing starts with original thinking, AI can become a very powerful tool. I am Pahuna and I run Lagraphia. And in the next video, the next week, stay tuned and subscribe. I'm going to show you how to tell whether your brand has real psychological positioning or whether your content is still blending into the category. If that is a problem you're trying to solve, subscribe and I'll see you at the next one. Bye.